Yeah. I don't know how those people can live in Hawaii, and I get bored living in Hawaii, right? So like,
I lived in Hawaii for 2 years, so I can. Well, I grew up on Guam. Dad was in the Air Force,
okay.
and so Guam, Hawaii, Philippines. Did a lot of South Pacific.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah,
I figured you'd have Eric and some of the people from NASP on here too. They love your book, Chance.
Oh, thanks.
Good.
Yeah,
Can you read though?
Alan and I met through that Facebook group I was telling you about, Gary.
Oh, cool.
And then he asked me to be on his podcast when I released the book. So Alan's been a great resource.
I'm stalking. Mr.
You
Warren.
are a great resource, Alan. We love Alan. Thank you.
Hey.
Glad you're part of our community.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you, Joe.
Yes, we're talking to you. So we are live streaming, right?
Awesome.
So
Yeah, I saw the
out-
message come up. You're live streaming.
We are live streaming, folks. So
We are alive.
we're just doing, this is our green room session, and we thought, hey, why not stream this as well? Because we have a lot of fun in here. So, yeah. We're still letting people into the room.
I haven't seen our usual cohorts come in yet, like
Not
Tanya.
yet.
So. Oh, Gabe's here.
Gabe's
Okay.
here. Now, the Thanksgiving is coming up, isn't it, for our American friends?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
It
we
is.
got to put up with family, so.
Because I'm getting a lot more emails about people going out of office.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we may have a smaller group today as everybody's getting ready to eat their Thanksgiving feast, their festive feast.
Well, for other people, it's Black Friday, which is now
Mhm.
Black Friday week, which is Black Friday month.
Right.
Hi, Rosa.
Hello.
Hi, Rosa.
Good
Hi,
morning,
Gabe.
everyone.
Hey, Gabe.
Well, at least it's morning here. You never know what time it is.
That's right. Hey, Rosa, we're only seeing your head. You're cut off.
Really?
You got a nice ceiling.
Nice ceiling.
There you go. Oh, there you go.
There you
There you
go.
go.
Yeah,
There
that's
you go.
better. Yeah. Yeah, Rosa's house has nice wooden beams in them.
Yes, you
love
had a
that.
good view of those.
Yeah.
Good.
Love it. Well, we're at 11:01. So what do you think, Gary?
Sure. I think people come on and they can join us. So, and as you're recording anyway, so if they missed the first few minutes, they can always catch up. So let's go ahead.
Let's kick it off, folks.
Okay.
So here we are for another Meet the Author. Gary, who do we have today?
Well, Tamara, I'm really pleased to introduce to the folks Chance Roberts. So Chance, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you. It's I'm looking forward to this. Been looking forward to this to a long time. So
Yeah, right. So the book that you've written, as you can see in my background, is called The Beginner's Guide to the Environmental Health and Safety Profession. So let's start right into it and just ask that first question. Who are the readers you are targeting?
yeah, really those new to or really considering a career in the environmental health and safety profession. And that can be starting from wherever, whether that's you're in college and there's a EHS program there at the college that you're thinking about, or maybe you're further on in a different career field and your company asks you to make the switch for maybe, let's just say, quality to safety, which we see quite a bit sometimes, or something like that. So really just that type of audience that's considering or switching to the EHS profession.
Ah, good. So usually there's a reason or decision why you wrote this guide. So what sort of needs are you trying to fulfill here?
Yeah, so number one, I didn't see anything out there that kind of tied a lot of different aspects together. I got asked quite a bit, hey, like, how do you get into EHS? What is it? And so instead of having one kind of all-encompassing guide, which I didn't find, I was like, well, there's a need, so maybe I need to write it. So really this kind of discusses protecting the company from and personnel, the safety profession from liability, the workforce from injuries, fatalities, things like that, and then protecting the environment from being harmed. Obviously, that's becoming increasingly important. And so I think, and me being a steward of the outdoors, it's something that's that I'm very passionate about myself, is the environment. So.
Right. It is a guide for beginners. So I see that in the book, you've covered things like career planning, and of course, plenty of tips and tricks for resume writing, job searching, and interviewing. I don't think we need to go into that. If people are really interested, they can just go ahead and buy your book. Yeah. I think this is a great chance, though, I could use that, or an opportunity to talk about our safety profession, at the bigger picture, maybe from the 10,000 foot level looking down. Because I see that in chapter 2, for the person that's weighing career choices, you will lay out what are the most important pros and cons. And number one pro for you is right now, there seems to be an extreme demand and growth opportunities. Can you set them, like, because I think you keep track of what the current market is like. I know you're based in Oklahoma, but can you share some insights and what is the current market situation?
Yeah, so I think, and this is, from personal experience, I do look, there's for a ton of professionals that I have in the field, acquaintances that I've made, a lot of times I have at least one that's looking for a new position in some regard. So I'm helping them find a new position, or doing what I can to help others, maybe some mentees that I mentor, things like that. So I'm always looking at those opportunities, and excuse me, really, it seems like companies are really focusing right now on employee health and safety and environment more than they ever have before, in my opinion. And then kind of, basing a stat to kind of show that, based on the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, they really estimate that the profession is going to grow around 7% from 2020 throughout 2030. And so I think I see that trajectory, those jobs are going to be continuing to grow, just because the amount of more awareness that we're seeing in the environmental health and safety world and profession.
Right. I'd just like to reach out to the audience, and chances gives an idea what's happening in the U.S. We have some Canadians on board, like Tanya tomorrow. Are we reflecting those same numbers down the States? Are we seeing a demand as well? You got any insights on that? Tanya, would you have any insights back east if looking at the market? No, Tanya's there. Is she coming in? There you are. Hi, Tanya.
Yeah, hi. Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I was just on a call this morning with somebody who is in the environmental space, and they were quite surprised that we had, oh Lord, I can't remember the name of the program. It's not a program, it's a concept, but overall, to incentivize people to use power off peak kind of stuff. And he had described to me that there are a lot of places that have just a flat rate for power consumption, and that other places have this incentivized structure to be able to use power when it's not most in demand. And I had said, well, I think that's the only concept I know. I think in Ontario, we've had incentivized, I mean, I can remember even being a little kid, like, don't put the wash in now, like put it in, later on during the evening. And, running the dishwasher overnight and this kind of thing was always a thing. So I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but I mean, that has been part of the Ontario landscape for as long as I can remember. And I can see Tamara shaking her head too. So maybe she'd like to weigh in as well.
We also get different prices at different times. Was that mentioned? Because I'm multitasking.
Yeah. Okay. So
sorry.
No, that's true.
But I'm a money saver. So for me, that's a real incentive, is that if I do my stuff that's high electricity at a certain time, I can have a lower bill.
Right. So let me talk to Rosa. I got your hand up. I was going to ask you a question. What's it
Oh,
like
well,
down in California for the?
Well, I have been, I have a lot of clients looking for safety and health professionals,
That's what I wanted to hear. Okay, right.
but they're global, they're positions, they're not just California, they're
Right.
global.
Are you seeing a lot of retirements happening down there?
I see, a lot of people tell me they are thinking of retiring, and that's tied into my research into the stress levels, the health and stress levels.
Yeah, yeah.
That it's a good time to just hang in there till retirement is a common comment. Another one is to just, looking for a different position. So because of the Great Resignation, there's a tremendous amount of movement.
Yeah, right. So, my first question, and in Chance's chapter 2, we talk about the demand side of the safety profession. Now, what you're referring to, Rosa, is the supply side. And you're right, there seems to be a labor shortage, a lot of industries. Now, right now, we're experiencing the big tech layoffs, where the big tech companies have last number I saw was 65,000 people have been laid off. Most of them, of course, are in IT. I don't know if that's a great sort of like, hey, are you interested in coming and going into the environmental safety and health profession? Maybe they should be buying your book, Chance, and have a look at that.
Yeah, maybe so. Speaking upon labor, I tend to agree. I think we're seeing a lot more people leave the workforce. I agree with Rosa's statements, and I think that's really kind of putting strain on companies. They're having to backfill these certain positions, and a lot of times they may not be able to find these candidates, or maybe it takes a little bit longer depending on different reasons, and then that in turn put strain upon the employees you have, right? Because they're having to cover additional sites, cover additional job responsibilities until that position is backfilled. So it's kind of twofold where, there's a lot of job opportunities out there, but there's definitely, I would say, a shortage of labor, or people maybe going through these certain programs or in the EHS field. So that's again based on personal research, but that's what I've seen.
Right. Tamara, you got your hand up?
Yeah, it's I just found it interesting when you were talking about tech for a moment, right? Because I was in tech for a short time, and it was the only place where, in fact, they would do these hefty hirings, right? They'd load up in the front of the year, and then they'd how do I put it? Because they're not really firing people. Their positions are dissolved, right? Which is a different category. So then they offload 60 to 80 people before the end of the year. And this was a pattern. And when I asked about it, it's like, well, this is our business model. This is what we do. And it was so deflating for the employees, right? So maybe we need like a campaign to come over and join health and safety, because we will love you forever.
Yeah. You're quite correct that is the IT pattern. It's cycled a lot. And the latest things I read about what's happening today is that, all those people, 65,000 or whatever, that are just recently laid off, a lot of them were hired just before the pandemic. So what's that thing about last in, first out that we see in IT? I don't think, I could be wrong, we experience that though in our safety industry with our safety professionals. I'm not aware of that unless somebody else in the audience here is aware of that sort of cycle. I haven't seen that myself though.
I haven't really seen that. I worked in the EHS, I guess, software side of things for a little while too. And even in the EHS specific software, it's pretty similar to the mass hirings and then dissolving of positions. Well, I mean, obviously that depends upon clientele that you gained and that you hold long term. But I saw that firsthand myself. So.
All right. Okay. So back to the book. You do
We have a
go through
sorry,
a list
Gary.
of your pros.
Sorry, Gary.
But
We
you've
have
also got a list of cons. Why not, eh? And I see that the extreme stress is your number one on your con list. So what other stressors are out there besides that one?
I guess examples of those stressors, cyclical up and downs, kind of just like we talked about, right? In the IT world or the software industry, but there's also like oil and gas. That's another cyclical industry that can put stress upon a person if the oil price goes down and you're working in EHS for an oil company. Some other stressors, just regulatory compliance, working through or with OSHA, the EPA, some of those state governmental bodies. There's always a potential of a catastrophic event or fatality. That's another stressor. And then constant change, obviously the workforce and not just the workforce in itself, but then the workplace is obviously always continuing to change with technology and things like that. So that can also add additional stress. And that's mostly negative stress. And then you've got kind of the positive side where you can really motivate or make a difference in a person's life each day. Like every day that I go out and go to work, I know that I'm going to have a chance to make a positive impact on somebody. And so that can be kind of stressful, but I feel like for me, that's a kind of a positive stressor. So. Hey, Gary, I think you're on mute.
Peter, your hands up. Go ahead.
There you go.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Been a while since I've been back. I'll just make a comment on the job market, all that stuff. So I'm in Ontario. Like I'm on LinkedIn and that, and I mean I'm retired and all that stuff, and kind of doing a little bit of consulting here and there and things. But I, with a bunch of groups and all that stuff on the platform and all that, there's a ton of jobs. I mean, I get notices every day for around here for, I mean, the GTA, which is for you, Chance, the Greater Toronto area. So there's EHS jobs coming out of everywhere and anywhere. So, I mean, in that sense, the market up here seems to be, or in the area seems to be quite vibrant. So, and I think just from my experience, I started on the environmental side and then I got the health and safety part of it. So I kind of look at things a little differently in the fact that, my first main concern was the environmental side of it. And then when you got the health and safety and where I work, and they seem to be going into all the ISO stuff. So, lots of experience with incorporating the 14,000 and the 9,000 because they always had quality. So it was interesting. So when you meld those all together, I mean, because as much as it's health and safety, it's the environmental part too, because they do go together. And especially when you start trying to, incorporate them into a management system, then, they all get intertwined, right? So specifically, they don't get kind of chopped up, the environmental side come to the health and safety side. So, I mean, if you want these systems to be vibrant, you have to, they have to be incorporated right across the board, right? So whether the environmental, your work practices and your health and safety work practices, I mean, so if you're going to have a vibrant system, they all have to intertwine with each other, right? So when you get audited, because they go through all of it, it's training, it's this, it's that, whatever, right? So it's kind of nice that, if you can get somebody that's multifaceted in the fact that they understand all of it, right? Because like I said, there's quite a connection there, and I don't know if people really realize that, especially when you get into into a company or to a process or whatever. So, I mean, I was in the tire business. I worked for Goodyear, and I worked for Magna up here, the auto industry, and then I ended up in the oil and gas industry at the end. So I've crossed a lot of, I've gone through all of it, right? So,
Right.
which has been interesting, but I mean, but each one's a different, kettle of fish, right? I mean, in the tire industry, it was all like, it was more health and safety, but you did have the environmental component, but I mean, it was so labor intensive when they were making rubber and all that stuff, man, like it's one whole completely different thing as opposed to you go to the oil and gas where I finished up, and guys just run machines in that, right? I mean, you just press buttons, right? You're looking at dials and you're making sure the process runs. So, there's a lot, I think, I'm not sure if people really realize that the connection and, it's, I guess every time I was hired, I had to do all of it. So I guess it's not like being, you get to some bigger facilities where you have different people to do different things, right? So
Right.
I kind of got, I owned all of it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So
My dad worked for Michelin Tire Company for 35 plus years. So those tire building, I'm connected with you on that.
yeah,
That's neat.
yeah.
Just back on the point of looking at cons, one of the biggest cons you talk about in your book is the possibility of being a scapegoat if something major occurs. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so, and I'm not speaking to a specific company or anything like that. I want to preface by saying that, but there have been some times in my career where I've known of or heard of or known the person actually who was a scapegoat for a major incident or accident at the site. So sometimes, you may be directly or indirectly involved as the EHS or HSE manager. But either way, I've seen it to where, companies have tried to pin that on the EHS professional. And so it really, I guess that it has that potential. Okay. So coming into the field, you don't want to think about that ever happening. But it is something that I was taught throughout my college program, but I think, some people may not have ever been taught that. So it is a real possibility that a company could try to pin a certain incident or something on someone. And then kind of co-joined with that, but separate, is when a company kind of views the person, like the safety person, as having all the EHS responsibility and not kind of, I guess, inputting the importance of employees owning it as well as supervisors, putting in the different aspects like building in capacities, as we'll talk to about, kind of like safety differently, safety 2 kind of stuff. I think we'll talk a little bit about that, but you kind of see those companies saying that the EHS professional or the EHS team of 2 or 3 people are the ones that oversee all of EHS. And I think that can kind of open up companies to problems and individuals in the profession to problems as well.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Just staying on your book, on chapter 4, you start talking about EHS education and training. My feeling is that it's supply side quagmire right now. We're seeing more universities and colleges offering various degrees, and some are accredited and some are not. And what about the School of Hard Knocks? So what's your advice to a beginner or maybe a seasoned tradesperson looking at wanting to make a career in EHS?
Yeah, so I'm gonna first take a moment to say there's nothing wrong with the School of Hard Knocks, and in fact, there is a lot of benefit to having real experience separate from maybe certifications and degrees. All right, I want to preface by saying that, but I also want to highlight the importance, I think, of degree programs, certifications, etc. I essentially think I have 2 different degrees in EHS, And they really helped me to lay a foundation of my EHS knowledge. And so I'm very passionate about those programs. Are they right for everyone in every case? No. I realize that, but I will never discourage anyone from going that route, whether accredited or not. There's some good programs that I know of where I've had great professionals that I've worked with that didn't come from an accredited safety program. So accredited or not, I don't discredit that EHS professionals college background or anything at all. And I think we have a lot more, openness or exposure, to different forms of media. So there's things like podcasts now. There's things like forums on the internet. I see Alan smiling there. He got me on his podcast, so shout out to Alan and Diary of a Ballman. But there's things like the Hop Nerd, which talks about safety second or safety differently. There's companies like the Safety Dojo that are geared towards helping new professionals. There's Safeopedia, shout out to you all. And then there's forums like that you can get on and really advance your knowledge, like safety nights, things like that, where that I think that are relatively new forms of media that are kind of taking off, and they provide a lot of US safety professionals Facebook groups. I mean, there's a ton of different types of I don't know what you call non-conventional maybe types of media that are kind of becoming more the norm and learning applications as well. So.
Yeah, right. In preparing for this Meet the Author session, I did my own personal homework, and I started looking at my local colleges and institutions to see what sort of things are they offering. And a good example is there's a local institution safety program and enlisted course on accident investigation. And I kind of went through the syllabus and I noticed the references. It describes root cause analysis and references a 1996 and a 2003 book. And my first impression was, yikes, they're really, really old books. And I'm going to ask a question, first a chance. I'm going to open this thing up as well to anybody else here, but are our institutions, are we setting up people to be recipe followers or chefs who know how to think?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. And I can obviously only speak to my experience with what I know and the research I've done in the college that I attended. So I know like specifically for Southeastern Oklahoma State, my alma mater, they did take a more traditional safety approach when learning. Again, that was 10 years ago. School. That's crazy for me to say, but that was 10 years ago for me. So I think that I don't want to say but most programs will go through where they review their material that they're using for these classes and try to update, as they see fit. But I do think that we're seeing a lot more kind of safety to HOP, kind of human and organizational performance type things. We're seeing that kind of shift. And I saw at Southeastern, we didn't have any specific classes that were titled these things, but a lot of the professors that taught there, they were teaching aspects of this. There wasn't just like a collective thought that it was like termed, that thing, but they talked about building capacity into your situations. And, they sprinkled these ideas across what they taught, but there wasn't a formalized like specific class to human and organizational performance or anything like that. Now, again, so I would say there's probably some universities out there that have those now. But I wouldn't say that it's as quote unquote mainstream as it should be yet. So
All right. Tamara, got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting, coming from a social work background, our degree in social work, one of the things that we learned there, which I think could be so important in the health and safety curriculum, is group dynamics and managing people skills. And I see Rosa bouncing her head at that. What are your, and I also wanted to bring in, also in the chat, there was discussion about adding to our curriculum in health and safety, also business, so that we understand how to demonstrate. Gabe was saying, being able to demonstrate the value to business. So I wanted to put that out there too. Like, what are people's thoughts on that?
Rosa, why don't you kick it off?
Well, I think a couple of years back, Sam Goodman's book, Safety Sucks, opened my eyes as to what goes on behind the scenes. And I began to interview people, safety and health advisors, and pretty much what he talks about in that book is mainstream. And it occurred to me that and then I was mentoring a lot of young professionals through my work with Wise Women in Safety Excellence and the ASSP, who would tell me that they were not prepared to handle the people issues. So, and that's what I was trained as a kindergarten teacher. That was my first career. And I was not trained in how to connect with 5-year-olds. At least 35 of them at a time. I could handle one, but 35 is an entire different place. And so, so I think, oh my gosh, these poor young people, we fill them full of knowledge, recipes, as Gary said. I love that. And then they get in there and they find out that they don't have the recipe they need. So, I think we have to rethink the whole thing. Maybe about the only practical side of my education as a teacher was my student teacher. I had 1 semester of student teaching, and maybe we could incorporate that into safety and health education, a semester in the field under an experienced mentor. I think that might help a lot.
Yeah, I think that's very beneficial. Again, that we didn't have a class specific to that at Southeastern, but they talked about the importance of building relationships and treating people like people and not numbers, and these different things, and how to connect with people. We're a big part of that, and that is truly one of the most important things to me when I'm talking to anyone that I mentor or anyone new to the field, is getting good at building relationships with different people. I cannot stress the importance of that enough. And where I did, I guess, get exposed to that in college, I don't think I was. I guess I didn't really grasp mentally how big of an aspect that would be when I actually stepped into the field. So I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, it's a biggie. Did you, I need to talk to you offline, because I've been trying to promote my book, The Relationship Factor in Safety Leadership, with professors, and I haven't gotten any takers really, because I think that would at least introduce people to some of the ways that they could manage their people relationships.
Yeah, for sure. We can talk offline about that for sure. And it's funny you mentioned Sam Goodman. He's a great guy. Connected with him through Alan, who's on here. Got to be on his Hop Nerd podcast and discuss his books. And I thought that I was the only one that thought like that in the Safety Sucks book, And so it was like really refreshing to read that and be like, oh, I'm not the only one that has these concerns. So great guy as well.
Gabe, I noticed that you're not on camera, on microphone, but you've got a ton of comments in the chat panel. We need to get you on here. Okay, come on and share some of your great insights with us, particularly the last one about building on that chef recipe metaphor. Where are you, Gabe?
You may not be able to, sometimes.
Oh, could be. Yeah, okay.
Don't have good reception, so he will if he can.
I'll come on mic though.
Oh, there he is.
There you are. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have camera up, but I'll come on mic. So.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, so building on that chef and recipe metaphor, as I had said about which I think is a fantastic concept in there. A couple thoughts on that. One, I think it's important to know the recipe, and then, but to also look at it with skeptical is the wrong word, but with an open mind, I guess, to be able to improve on the recipe itself. I think that that's probably where the safety mentoring comes into play, is that many people that are coming into the safety profession will have their own unique take and their spin on how to approach it. But if they don't have the guidance and the room to exercise and experiment, how do we expect the profession to advance anyway? It's going to become a cookie cutter situation if that's the case.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment, Gabe, and I think we've seen that kind of in the past, that kind of cookie cutter instance, and that's another reason I'm really passionate about mentoring new professionals in the field. And so I have a couple mentees now that I'm trying to mentor as well, because I had great mentors professionally coming out of college, and that was significant upon me. Like, I don't know where I would be today if I'd even still be in the field if it wasn't for those people. So I try to, I guess, for lack of a better term, give back, I guess, to mentor those new professionals and really allow them to experiment, like you said, ask questions, bounce ideas off in different scenarios. And I don't think there's really one way to reach any certain goal. You know, you may fall down 3 or 4 times, but getting back up and changing route to get to the top of the mountain is what we want to produce, rather than cookie cutter, this way is the only way, right? So I think that's very, very important, Gabe.
Yeah, Peter, go ahead.
Just got, like, for the recipe to blend, so blending. So I guess this is going back to what just part of my background, but I think it changes with each. So your boss, so whether it's your plant manager or whoever you report to, so a perfect example, this last place I was working at, the gentleman that hired me, he retired. Well, then the guy that took over the job was a guy that him and I clashed all the time, because he used to be the production manager, and then he wasn't much on the safety part or the environmental part, and then he became my boss. So I'm going, oh God, I'm going, like, am I looking for another job, or what's going on here, right? So and I had to go in and talk to him, like I had a blunt conversation with him, and I said, you tell me now, right? I mean, I'll do the same thing I did for our previous boss. I mean, that's the keep you out of jail or whatever, do all that stuff. But he said, fine. But I mean, so what I'm trying to say is that I think depending on the personnel of people you work with, whatever, the recipe changes, right? So, because you have to deal with that, the psychology of that person, the way he sees things, right? And you have to have an intuition too on what they really want, and, how you can apply yourself, and, and I think this job is thankless at times, because going back to, fingers get pointed at you, if things happen. But, again, it goes back to, do you have everything in place? You have the training in place, you have this in place, so that's why I think when you go back through the whole thing, and if you really look at, if you've got all the steps in place, and they can't point the finger at you, but I mean, I know, and Chance, you're right, and sure, it's happened lots of times, and you just go like, well, here's everything we've done. So you can't help it if somebody does something, I'm going to say it, stupid or whatever, right? I mean, you can't fix stupid. So, I think that's something that people, when you go to mentor, that I've had some younger people in over time, and, I try to tell them, I says, you got to be able to read the room, right? So, and that's part of, this job too, is because you really are out there by yourself, right? As much as they're all going to be pointing fingers at somebody. And if you got environmental health and safety, you pretty well cover everything in a process. So so that's okay. That's my take on it. But
Yeah, thanks for that. I agree. I think it kind of goes back to the profession being ever changing. I think even in the setting is ever changing, right? You have one boss now, you got another boss in 2 months because that one retires. Again, maybe you're trying to pitch something to get it done, and that guy was a numbers guy, and this guy is more relationship driven, and so you got to change on the fly. So I completely agree with that, Peter.
So let's talk a bit about chefs, because my understanding that chefs basically learn the principles of cooking. So I'm trying to connect this with the principles of safety, because I didn't really know what the principles of cooking were until I read this book called Salt, Fat, Acid, and Heat. Then being an engineer, I realized that cooking was all chemistry. So I get this now. So I would think part of this idea, Peter, of the recipe is that sometimes your recipe has ingredients, then you realize, oh, I don't have that ingredient. What do I do? Right? So the chef goes, well, you can substitute this.
Mm-hmm.
So my question, therefore, is I'm assuming that most of us on this call are probably chefs. So is it our responsibility to contact these college instructors and professors and enlighten them, saying, your book is 20 years out of date. You need to buy Rosa's book. You need to buy so-and-so's book. Is that up to us? Because if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
There is a very good point behind that question. And I can speak, like, for me, for this book that I just released, I reached out to many of the universities and tried to get them to use them in their entry level classes. I think I reached out to 40 and I had one taker.
Wow.
So I, it is something that I proactively tried to do. And I also suggest other books, not just plugging my own to those. But I am, I did try to take the initiative with that. And I do think that, is it all on us? No, I mean, of course not. I think as a institutional leader at your, EHS program or whatever, it should be reviewed and some of those should be introduced. And I'm not in all saying that these programs aren't doing that or aren't doing it well enough. I'm just saying that yes, it can be both ways. And I think it should be both ways. I think we should reach out, especially if you've got a connection, let's say, to your alma mater, or maybe you're even like a part-time instructor there, and you're like, hey, what about this book? Can we implement this one? So yeah, I think it should go both ways, but that's a very important discussion to have.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, Ellen, if you don't mind, because you run a podcast. What's your experience in trying to reach out to some of the academics and some of the colleges? Are you having a lot of traction there?
It all depends. Being here in Tennessee, I work a lot with people from University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So as they're getting their 500, their 510, and they're going into the program, I'm fortunate that some of the teachers there, because of being a local consultant, having worked for Department of Defense, interviewing Chance and Sam Goodman and others, they do listen to what they have, and that's putting the message. A lot of the clients I'm dealing with in Tennessee that are going to University of Tennessee, they're going to Murfreesboro, taking these programs because of the high demand right now for safety. A lot of the safety people are leaving, and so the colleges are trying to take tradesmen, and not just tradesmen, but some of the older generation, nurses, people that are involved with safety, teachers like Rosa that have the capability to communicate the message out. And that's one of the big things. When I took Chance's book, after I read it and interviewed him, I sent it over to UT, to the people in the workplace. So they suggested that, but they asked, how do we get the people that we're trying to get out the trades? And right now here in Tennessee, a big thing is all the transitioning military. They're back from Iraq, Afghanistan, trying to get them involved in some of that. And they're looking at safety for the same thing Chance puts in there. We're going for the higher education. We've seen combat construction. We've seen rebuilding things. But, one of the holdups was having a program in place. In Chance's book, actually gave them, hey, if I don't have the educational experience, this is what I can do. I can go to these groups like Safepedia. I can go to U.S. safety professionals and get trained by people that went through this education, that understand it and can promote it that way. But it's spreading. It really is, Gary.
Yeah.
And Gary, I'd like to put in the question here about how about leveling it up so organizations, associations, etc. If we could harness the power of those going to the universities, what about that idea?
Sure.
Because they hold weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say so, Tamara.
Yeah.
But what some of them are concerned about, depending on, and Chance and I see this a lot of time on the U.S. Safety Professionals Group, that's a great idea. But a lot of people that are coming into safety now, they don't know what kind of safety. They're applying for like 9 or 10 different jobs, not even knowing if it's a good fit for construction, general industry, environmental. And some of them have some really great backgrounds, but they don't follow the ASSP or something like that because they don't know where they belong. So that is a good idea, getting them to promote it, because a lot of your biggest safety professionals right now in the industry are actually HR managers. They're having to wear dual hats. So this kind of information going to HR personnel that are filling both those gaps, that are going to ASSP or some of these other groups like that, that'd be a huge thing for them because they're having to fill those two roles. Books like this will give them an idea. I don't need to know everything about construction. I need to know what's in my facility, and they go to the bigger organizations to find out about it.
Yeah. Anybody else with some thoughts on this?
That sounds like it might be a good business to become a connector between new safety professionals and jobs, because so much of the stress and discontent that I have heard has to do with a bad fit with that job, right? They thought they were going to be doing one thing and they end up doing something else. They don't feel appreciated. And that's a whole management thing of not knowing how to manage, but yeah, I agree. It's in fact, Gary helped me proof one of the chapters in my book where my new book coming out, where I'm talking about the unused potential of health and safety professionals. There's all this talent and commitment, desire to help. It attracts a unique type of person. Well, I shouldn't say unique, but a certain type of person that gets attracted to helping others, and they need to be treated differently than a tech person, but nobody educates the managers either. So maybe that's another thing that we have to work on, not just the education of the safety professionals, but the education of the business management curriculum.
Yeah, I think that's important. And that kind of goes back to the structure, the way I wrote this book. I kind of wrote it in the way that hopefully like line managers and stuff could read it and, find some applicability in that as well. So not just for EHS professional, I know it's geared toward that, but there's some things that stand out that, that are applicable to a lot of different people in the workplace. Gary, do you mind if I address Gabe's question in the comments?
No, it's open. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So Gabe, your question about safety professional college programs, and are there more college with formalized programs around health and safety? There definitely are more than 10 years ago. When I was researching who to reach out to about my book and, kind of establishing partnerships, there were many universities that I did not know had, EHS programs. So I've definitely seen that number grow in the last 10 years. I would say it's even going to grow more. There are a lot more formalized programs, and I think even a lot of those programs are searching for those accreditations. Maybe they've been around for a while, but they haven't been accredited, and now they're searching, to get accredited. And shout out to the University of Findlay in Findlay, Ohio. That was a program that I didn't know that existed, and they're the one that partnered with my book, and I got to speak to them, and so I'm thankful for that opportunity. But like I said, I didn't know that program existed. it wasn't until a couple years ago that I didn't even know what one in my own state existed, at Northeastern Oklahoma State University, and so that they have a program. So yes, I think we're seeing more and more of those official kind of formalized programs pop up.
Yeah, good. Okay. Just to head back to the book, in one of your chapters, your later chapters, you actually taken the advice that you've got from others, and you've generated several practical tips on becoming successful. I think the first two define what humble means to me: know what you don't know, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There's one, though, I think I'd like to shed more light on: indemnify yourself. It kind of goes back to the beginning when we talked about the possibility of becoming a scapegoat of a major incident. So how does an ESH professional covers one's arse?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually get this quite a bit because of that section in the book. But in simple terms, it's maintaining a paper trail, right? And to preface, not every conversation needs an email follow-up, right? But there are conversations where maybe you outline something specifically. Let's just say for a regulatory agency comes on site and they do an audit, they find something. So you're working with site management team to get that corrected. You have a phone call. Well, if you have a phone call asking them to do something, there's no proof that was asked unless the phone call is recorded, in which most cases it's not. So it's as quick as simply following up with an email stating, hey, per our phone conversation, could you implement this item that, let's just say, OSHA found on site? That way you've got a paper trail saying, hey, I worked with the management team and told them, like, this is what we need to do. Kind of left it up to them to best figure out, or work together to best figure out, how to fix this issue. But I did address that it needed to be done. That way, if for whatever reason that issue is not fixed and there is some significant event, you can't be the scapegoat because you have that paper trail stating that you told them to do this. So again, you've got to be cognitive of the situation. Again, not every phone call deserves a follow-up email, but there are those that definitely do deserve those, and so that was something I was taught at Southeastern, and they said it many times over. I'll never forget that. They used a different word instead of ours, but that's a good one as well. So yeah, I think that's important. It was important for me to input in the book so that professionals understand how to protect themselves.
Great. Okay. Well, there seems to be, and maybe we touched upon it briefly about certifications, but there seems to be a lot of certifications from various safety bodies. So can you just kind of tell us what's out there and your viewpoint on what sort of certifications we should be looking at?
Yeah, so this is actually a question that Alan and I see probably every day on U.S. Safety Professionals Facebook page. You get, what certifications should I go after? What should I get or look into? And really, it's kind of hard to tell without knowing the person's background and goals, because there's just so many out there. I mean, if you plan on working in, utilities for a while, then the certified utility safety specialist may be the route to go, right? Or maybe if you're working in construction, then the CHST may be the route to go. So there's a lot of different routes. There's a lot of different certifications that are specific. Again, technically they're not required for any position, but you are seeing at least in the preferred section of most job descriptions of wanting these certifications. And really the ones that I see the most asked for on job descriptions are those by the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, or BCSP. So things like the ASP or the CSP, the Certified Safety Professional. And then also the CIH, or Certified Industrial Hygienist. That's another one that's pretty big on those lists. in governmental contracting, and NASP is really big. And so you may see a lot of people with those NASP certifications as well. Again, it's not, if you're looking just specifically to land a job, I would say, and this again is personal research, what I've seen is the BCSP is the most list on desired on job descriptions and application requests. That's not saying that they're any better than NASP or anything like that. And in fact, I have multiple certifications from multiple certifying entities, just because it allows you to become more well-rounded, I feel like personally. So stuff that's on the CSP test that I passed, it may focus more on, the I don't know, industrial hygiene or situational things, to where I'm also a certified safety and health manager certification, to where that may focus on a different aspect of safety. So when you're studying, you study a different aspect. Are certifications the end all be all? No, I don't think they are, but they are becoming more recognized. And I think companies are desiring those that are certified. And it's a great way to expand your knowledge, right? You've got to earn those continuing education units, so CEUs that everybody, talks about. And so it's just a way to make sure that you're continuing to go to these conferences, attend these, these meetings or webinars and things like that. So you continue to learn and, continue to grow yourself professionally in the EHS field.
Right. Like one of the fun things I like to do when I go to safety conferences, for that matter, any conferences, when you meet in the lobby, then you exchange your business cards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always looking at which business card has the most those abbreviations after that
letters. Yeah, some people have the whole alphabet behind their name.
And some I recognize. Oh yeah, all you have to do is just pay an annual fee. I change those 4 initials, so I kind of like, so and that one there. Okay, good. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I'd like to give you an opportunity then to maybe leave our audience, and thank you everybody for really participating. What would be your 3 takeaways that you would like to leave to help spread the word?
Yeah, so number one, I think the profession is evolving. I think, when I first started, and in fact, my first company, we replaced a group of safety cops, and so they were not well liked at the company. And so when I came in, it was a weird dynamic of having to change that culture around. And really, we were working on kind of the safety differently kind of aspect, human organizational performance, without actually knowing, that was, the term for it 10 years ago. So, but I think you're seeing the profession evolve away from the safety cop mentality and kind of to that human organizational performance and building capacity into systems and stuff like that. So, I think now is a great time to kind of jump on the bandwagon if you're coming from maybe one of those IT careers or whatever your background you have. I think now is a great time to jump on the EHS bandwagon. But I think another thing that's huge for me is the relationship aspect, and I can't drive home enough the importance of being good at building relationships and inspiring employees, getting their feedback on and involving them in a lot of different things, just treat them. One thing that I did when I first started, when we were trying to change that culture, was I spent each day with a different person at lunch. Whether they wanted me to or not. Some people like to be alone, but whether they wanted me to or not, I would ask them about, themselves, their families, just treat them like a human, have a genuine conversation with them. And that went a lot further than I could have ever imagined. And so I can't stress enough the importance of building relationships with employees. And then finally, it's just being humble, knowing what you don't know, not being afraid to ask for help. You know, as Peter, alluded to, we have environmental health and safety. That's three different things that we're responsible for. Some people, some professions add quality into that, add security into that. You got these big long titles but at the end of the day, we cannot be experts in every single thing. And so we've got to realize that. We've got to understand the importance of networking in that case. So you have individuals you can reach out to that may be better or more qualified in those certain areas where you lack. And then you continue to learn and build those areas, but being humble enough to know that, hey, you don't know everything, and it's better to ask for help and say you'll follow up than to give an answer off the cusp that may be wrong and could cause someone to get hurt or potentially a fatality. So
Great.
those are the things I'd like to leave with. So,
Well, thanks, Chance. Well, we are at the top of the hour, and before I turn it to tomorrow, typically what tomorrow we'll do, we'll post this on LinkedIn, the video recording, as well as on YouTube. And I really encourage everyone here is use your networks and let's get the word out, particularly on this particular show, because I really feel it's up to us to get the word out.
Right.
That things have to change, and maybe it starts with us.
Yes. Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
So at the beginning of the year, I'm starting a podcast called New to Safety. So anyone that's new to the field, I would just ask you to join, listen in. I plan on having guests like Sam Goodman, like Alan on the show. And just really geared towards helping those professionals, no matter how they come into the field, but those that are new to the field. Rose, I'd be interested in having you on to talk as well. So, so yeah, starting at the beginning of the year, I'm looking to start that. And thanks to Safeopedia for having me on today. This has been fantastic, and I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Sparrow. Over to you.
Well,
Right.
thank you, Chance, for coming on and sharing your knowledge today. And thank you, Gary, for, as a
Yes.
community member doing all this. We greatly appreciate it. And to our audience, thank you for coming out, because without you, we wouldn't even have this show. Now, I have dropped the link to connect with Chance into the chat, as well as the link to view his book. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Paul.
everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.